Hello, welcome to another video. Today I am here to talk to you about my top 12 auto by authors. I tried to make this a top 10, but that did not work. There are 12, so we're going to talk about my top 12, and honestly narrowing it down to 12 was a struggle as well, and there are still others that I think would qualify for this list. But these are the 12 we're going with. Some of these you will definitely know are going to be on this list, and you will be expecting. Some of them maybe less so, I don't know. But either way, let's crack on with my top 12 auto-buy authors. First up, it will come as no surprise that my number one spot goes to Sebastian de Castell. Not that these are in any particular order, but Sebastian de Castell is obviously an auto-buy author for me. I absolutely adore his writing style, and I have adored everything that I have read from him. The Spellslinger series and the Greatcoat series. The Greatcoat series is one of my favourites of all time. Night Shadow being my favourite book ever. I know I'm holding up Spellslinger, but I love all of his books so very much, so he definitely counts. His writing style is witty, sarcastic, funny, but it's also like so action-packed, and especially in the Greatcoats, like, it's really brutal. I definitely can appreciate how his writing style might not be for everyone, but it completely meshes with me, and I absolutely love it. It is entirely my cup of tea. I love the way he can, like, break down that fourth wall and almost, like, address the reader, and it just works so well with his style and his way of telling a story. I adore this man and his books, and I will buy any book that he puts out. Any of them. All of them. I want them all. Next up is another one that should be really obvious, but we have Victoria Schwab, V.E. Schwab. I own all of her books, and I will continue to purchase all of her books. She is one of my favourite authors. I have read everything I can from her. Actually, that's a lie. I have not yet read Everyday Angel, but I do own it. I love her. I love her writing style. I love her stories. She definitely has some trends that she leans into, and some, I don't want to call them tropes that she leans into, but there's definitely, like, some specific themes that she leans towards with her writing. But that theme that she goes for is entirely up my street. I love it. I love the atmosphere that this woman can write, the characters that she comes up with. Her writing is just beautiful. So, don't want to say lyrical, but it's just gorgeous. So atmospheric. It just envelops you. I love it. Most recently I've read Gallant from her, and I just fell in love with that book. And I am in love with V.E. Schwab in general. Their writing is just so gorgeous, and I will read and purchase anything that they put out. Now we'll go into the perhaps slightly less obvious ones, but we have Lisa Ludeck. She currently only has 4 books out. I have currently only read 2 of them, but I own all of them, and I plan on reading at least one of her other ones very soon. In fact, by the time this video goes up, I may have already read it, I don't know. But I love Lisa Ludeck. This duology, the Shiver of Snow and Sky, Storm of Ice and Stars duology, was my first exposure to her. They were her first books, but I just fell in love with them, and how much I loved them and how much they took me by surprise has just made me such a fan of her as a writer, and I have continued to purchase her books. As I say, I haven't read them yet, so I don't have much of an opinion on her style, like, across series, but in this polar fantasy duology, I fell in love with Lisa Ludeck. And I think she's massively underrated, so if you haven't checked out anything by Lisa Ludeck, I would recommend. This particular duology focuses on an island where the skies change colour based on what the goddess is foretelling, and when it's red, the lights glow red, beware the danger up ahead. and there is a red sky and our main character trying to reach the goddess. There is also a plague, bear that in mind, but I absolutely adore it. It was a really compelling read, and I can't wait to read more from Lisa Ludeck. I literally have them on my shelf. It's my own fault I haven't yet, but I'm very excited to do so. Next up, we have Sophie Anderson, author of The House with Chicken Legs, The Girl Who Speaks Bear, The Castle of Tangled Magic, and The Thief Who Sang Storms. At this point of filming, I have not yet read The Thief Who Sang Storms. At the point of this video going up, the chances are pretty high that I will have, because I can't wait very long to dive into the newest Sophie Anderson books. I'm really excited about that. Sophie Anderson has a fantastic way of weaving in Slavic folklore and fairy tales into her stories. They're just so beautiful and so well done, and the morals are always so heartwarming, and she just has an incredible way with words. I love Slavic folklore and fairy tales and all things like that, and just the way that she writes them in such a whimsical and beautiful way. Having now been exposed to a few more of those originals, it's impressive actually, because the originals are pretty brutal, but she writes them in such a beautiful and whimsical way, and I will continue to read anything that she puts out. I think she's fantastic. Next up, I have Vashti Hardy, author of Brightstorm, one of my favourite middle grades of all time, and her new release is next month, I want to say, which is the third book in this trilogy, and I'm so excited. I cannot wait to get my mitts into that. I love Vashti Hardy. Vashti Hardy is very much a comfort author for me. When I had a really hard time earlier last year, there was a vlog up on this actually. I did a vlog of reminding myself how to read with Vashti Hardy, because I went through a rough patch where I wasn't really feeling any passion for books or anything, but reading the newer Vashti Hardy releases that I hadn't got to at that point really just sparked that love back up in me and reminded me how passionate I was for reading. And I think Vashti Hardy is an absolute gem of an individual. I will continue to read all of her books. It's just so comforting to me. Her steampunky vibes are top-notch. Absolutely love them. Sense of adventure, the friendships. I love her. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside and reminds me of just feeling happiness. Is that really cringy? I don't know. Next up, I have Katherine Arden, author of Bear and the Nightingale, which is the Winter Night trilogy. The Winter Night trilogy is one of my favourite trilogies, but Katherine Arden does not only write these adult books, but also has her middle grade horror series, the Small Spaces series. Small Spaces, Dead Voices, and Dark Waters. Haven't yet read Dark Waters, but I don't read horror. I don't like horror. Middle grade spooky is the best I can do, and Katherine Arden's middle grade spooky is top tier middle grade spooky, in my opinion. But I'm not a horror reader, so take my opinion there with a big old teaspoon of salt. But for someone who doesn't read horror, the fact that Katherine Arden can make me feel those chills and be okay with it? I don't know how to explain that properly, but the writing in this is just whimsical and beautiful. A lot of people say it's slow. It is slow. It's a slow build, but it's so atmospheric and I think really pays off. So I love this series a whole heckin' ton. Beautifully written. The world is beautifully built. My emotions were shattered. I love these books, and these Fairy Loot editions are gorgeous as well. Hold on, let me just show you under the dust jacket as well, because it's so pretty. I love them so much. But yeah, also her middle grade horror series. For someone that doesn't like horror, Katherine Arden makes me love it, and I love that series as well, which I think is a testament to her writing, that she can do two things so very differently that I love both of. I will read anything else that she comes out with, 100%. I will do that. Next up, I have Heather Fawcett. Heather Fawcett has written this YA duology, Even the Darkest Stars and All the Wandering Light, but also a few middle grades as well. We have Ember and the Ice Dragons, Language of Ghosts, and her most recent one, The School. Can't remember the title of it. I will put a cover here. This one I do not currently own, because I can't get hold of it, but I want it. So I'm still counting Heather Fawcett as an auto by author, even though I cannot get hold of her latest middle grade. But I want it, and when I can get hold of it, I will buy it, so she counts. I don't know what it is necessarily about Heather Fawcett, I just really like the premise of her stories. This duology was my first exposure to Heather Fawcett, and I really enjoyed it. Again, polar fantasy. And I think that's what made me like fall in love with her to start with. But then I adore middle grades, and the fact that she's delved into middle grade as well and has more middle grades out now. Like, I just really like the premise for her stories. Like, the language of ghosts about this moving island really caught my attention, and something about the stories that Heather Fawcett comes out with grab my attention. So I will continue to read whatever she puts out. I don't think it's necessarily her writing style that does it for me, but something about her ideas and the way she executes them is what does it for me with Heather Fawcett. Next up, I have Jamie Littler, author of Frostheart. Currently, he only has the Frostheart trilogy out, but I love them. I love his writing, I love his illustrations, I think he's a top-notch guy. Will I continue to read anything that this man puts out? Yes, I will. Middle grade, I can imagine he'll probably stay in middle grade, I don't know. Brilliant author, 5-star reads from him so far. Haven't read the third one in this trilogy yet, it scares me, but 5-star reads from him so far. I have really high hopes for anything that Jamie Littler comes out with in future, and I will definitely continue to purchase them. Next up I have Sophie Green, author of Potkin and Stubbs. Sophie is a fantastic writer, but also a fantastic woman. I've met her a few times. I went to a couple of her book launches. I just really like her as a person and as an author. I really liked the Potkin and Stubbs series. Again, the atmosphere that she is able to create is incredible. The like gothic detective noir vibes, like I just think that she's done a fantastic job with that. And again, the vibes of the story, like the atmosphere created, the execution of the ideas, like it's creepy, but it's not creepy, and I think it's just that like right middle ground. Like, it would terrify my sisters, but it's just that like perfect darker middle ground, and I think it's fantastic, and I will continue to read anything that Sophie Green puts out, and I will continue to support her because I think she's fantastic. My camera battery is flashing, so I apologise if I fly through the rest of these. But next up we have Jen Lyons, author of Ruin of Kings, the Chorus of Dragons series. I have read, at this point, the first 3. By the time this video goes up, I will have read all 4 of them because I'm actually starting the 4th one on the day of filming this. But this book got 5 stars from me so quickly. The sequel got 5 stars from me so quickly, as did the 3rd one. So far, everything I've read from Jen Lyons has been 5 stars, and she has the potential to be one of my favourite authors. This series is definitely one of my favourite series. It's a series I've been pushing a lot. I love it so much. I've read all of these books so quickly for the size of them because it's just so compelling. It's so fast-paced, it's so addictive, it's action-packed. The plot is mind-blowing at the same time as being baffling and confusing, but it keeps you so intrigued and like sprinkles the information and the answers and stuff, and it just, it makes me so excited to read her books. So I'm gonna continue reading her books and anything else that she comes out with, because if this series is anything to go by, her writing, her ideas, her story development and plot, incredible. Incredible. I will continue to read anything she writes. Next up, I have S.A. Chakraborty, atmospheric masterpiece. The world built in this is just divine. Character developments. Emotional trauma. I loved The City of Brass. The Daevabad trilogy was fantastic. S.A. Chakraborty's writing was fantastic. Again, similarly with The Bear and the Nightingale, like, people say that it's a little bit slow, but it built up such an atmosphere, it built up the foundations for this beautiful world, and I adored it, and I could see everything. I was so enveloped by this world, and the beauty of this atmosphere It just sucked me in entirely. And I very much, with the like slower beginning on this one, very much was just like, I'm just gonna pay attention to what I think is important and just push through some of those like slower, more info dumpy bits at the beginning to get to the payoff. And oh my god, the payoff. And if it was important, it came back, which I think was a good touch there, so it didn't feel too overwhelming. But yeah, the main point is the beautiful world and the incredible atmosphere. Atmosphere is really important to me, it turns out. And finally, last on my list, we have David Ragg, author of The Black Hawks and The Righteous. He does currently only have this duology out, but comparing him to some of my other favourite authors, I have to compare him to Sebastian de Castell because of the witty, sarcastic writing style, the attitude that his characters have, the hilarity of some of the scenes and the monologues. This book was funny, but this book was also action-packed and brutal. And that was such a good combination. If you like the Greatcoats, I really think you will enjoy The Black Hawks. I've also heard, comparatively to like Kings of the Wild, I haven't read Kings of the Wild myself yet, but that like band of mercenaries that are perhaps past their prime, but are still kicking butt, absolutely. But it is definitely the humour in the writing style here, David Ragg's humour. It's very British, but it is top-notch. I fell in love with this duology. His writing style is definitely one of my new favourites. The humour, the sarcasm, the attitude. I loved it. But yeah, this one's about a young knight called Shell who needs to deliver the prince from one side of the kingdom to the other whilst it's at war and everything is going to shit. But whilst they've got assassins trailing them, they need assassins and mercenaries on their side. So they kind of team up with the Black Hawks to get this whinging brat of a prince from one side of the world to the other. The attitude. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. And there we have it. There are my top 12 auto by authors. I hope this has been somewhat interesting to you. Maybe some of those took you by surprise. I don't know. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, give us a thumbs up. Chat to me down below. Let me know what your top auto by authors are. I would love to know. But otherwise, I shall see you in whatever comes next. Bye!